they were losing the biggest deals in the earlier stages when the more junior profiles were evaluating these deals. And this, of course, is quite infuriating, right? Because that's the business model. Essentially, you're trying to find that needle in a haystack.
Hiring the right person, building the right team is incredibly relevant, incredibly important, and you need to dedicate as much time as necessary to guarantee that you're getting the right talent on board.
Humberto, I'd love to hear a bit more about what you guys are doing with venture analytics, because it's not an area I know a lot about. And so it'd be great just to hear what you guys are doing and the kind of impact you've had so far.
Yeah. So, I mean, over the last couple of years, there's been a radical increase in attention into how one can use data-driven initiatives in venture. I mean, it's funny because, and we call it the paradox, the venture AI paradox, because a lot of the businesses and companies and organizations that in the past have developed or current AI capabilities have been at some point received funding from venture. And venture right now is, by the way, all into AI. It's like number one investment focus, and we see it. It's just incredible. Yet, very few venture funds actually have integrated AI and these new technologies into the way they operate, right? We see this going all over the place, going in all sorts of industries and just changing the way everything is being done left and right. Yet venture continues to operate with essentially Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF, and that's it, right? So we started like this road and trying to integrate AI into the way we operate. So more than 4 years ago, had a couple of grants that allowed us to like fund the initial work. One of them was aimed to learn precisely how could AI be integrated. The other one, since we're impact investors, or at Catapult VC we're impact investors, we wanted to also develop some AI model to understand how to quantify the potential impact that startups could have. Today we developed quite a strong AI capabilities in like the way we operate, and we're able to, for example, find startups using AI. We essentially built an AI scout, but more than that, we screen the companies. We were able now to augment the amount of information that is gathered from like the different deals that we're evaluating and so on. And we built like, these other models that allow us to understand the impact and the potential positive outcomes of investing in a specific company and how much or how close that aligns with our investment thesis and our impact mandate. So that's some of the work that we've been doing over there. It's been quite exciting, to be honest, seeing this road. Like 4 years ago, we just had like this big question, is it even possible at all? And today we have very clear ambitions and we know exactly where to continue developing these tools and like what the next steps are. And as part of that, actually, we recently launched North Star Impact Analytics, which is a spin out of the work that we've been doing here and now making it its own organization, effectively a startup, offering these services to other venture and impact investors, as well as private equity. Pretty exciting times, and really, quite exciting what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's exciting because it's innovative. And as you say, there's this weird, ironic paradox of investing in all these AI companies, but not doing it necessarily yourself, or not typically. For the AI Scout then, like I'd love to know more about like the before and after, like how was scouting for new startups traditionally done, or probably is still traditionally done by most VCs, and now how has that changed with the AI Scout that you've built?
I guess venture investors and venture funds essentially have different sources for getting access to deals, right? Of course, you may leverage on I guess like the number one that everybody thinks about is your brand, and then how your brand is strong enough to pull natural applicants and startups that approach you upfront. But then some others may have as well their network that they leverage on. They also have scouts and internal teams that are actively reaching out to find companies, and that's essentially like the area that we're kind of targeting to make in a way increase its efficiency and how effective it is. Basically, what many do is like you get these junior profiles. you onboard them for 3, 4, 5 months. Some people just get some interns from students from the closer universities they got or something like that. You train them onto the kind of companies that you want to find, and then you get these sprints where they just go out there and try to find as many companies as possible. And they may be going through databases, web, any web pages that collect startups and this kind of stuff, just trying to populate essentially your CRM. And they basically ask some basic simple questions whether this fits or not the type of companies they should be looking at. And when you do that, you're essentially limited to a couple of things. First of all, the human capability, or like the human time limitation, right? As a human, you just can't see so many companies in any specific given amount of time, and the attention span as well that you can have as a human. It decreases with time, as everybody has more than once worked through like these endless files, and as you're going through it, eventually you start getting tired of seeing things, and you just start missing out on great opportunities. So that's one. And the other one is, I guess, like, you also depend on the experience and the limited experience that more junior profiles may have when you're doing this kind of stuff, right? And it's quite easy as well to miss out on relevant deals, or deals that I guess more experienced or more senior members in the team would not do so. So what we do, and the approach that we do now, is essentially we overcome these two in specific ways, but basically we can see far more deals in a shorter period in time than what you could possibly have enough capacity in humans to go through. That's number one. And the second one is that we also learn from experience, and then our algorithms are set up in a way that they learn from experience, so they become more and more accurate as they're interacting with more senior members in your team. And therefore you don't have like this learning curve delay and then losing this capability when your intern leaves or when your scout leaves, because this remains there and you're just honing a more and more capable AI scout. So that's in a way how we're changing the scouting process per se with the approach that we've had today.
That's really interesting. And is part of the focus is part of the problem to reduce the false positives or the false negatives more? So, for example, are you more worried about the 1 in a million chance of missing out on the next Facebook and making sure you have a chance at that? Or are you more interested in not clogging up your VC's time, wasting endless interview time in those kind of first calls with the company? Or is it a bit of both?
We did this analysis some time ago, and we've done it with different funds and different portfolios. And we essentially were evaluating where the decisions were being made in the different stages in their screening process. And we kind of found out that they were losing the biggest deals in the earlier stages when the more junior profiles were evaluating these deals, right? And this, of course, is quite infuriating, right? Because that's the business model. Essentially, you're trying to find that needle in a haystack. And yeah, so that's where the largest opportunity is, right? So like having these false negatives and saying, no, this is not going to be a great deal, because either whoever was screening it was not skilled enough, experienced enough, or just was too tired of looking at this company, or did not pay enough attention or time to it, and then missing out on this great opportunity just because of these things that it could have been in your control.
It's really interesting. And I think there's a great analogy here to hiring, because of course it's a similar thing. You have a funnel, you have outbound, you have inbound. You want it to have an effective screening process. But one thing I've always thought about companies is they don't have any sense of the false negatives. They never really think about the candidates they rejected and where they went, because it's just a CV that someone clicked a button on. They would have no idea if they rejected the next Elon Musk or whoever. Whereas for a VC, that is, like, as you say, unimaginable pain. When you see a company that you actually have presented to you that you could have had a chat to that's gone on to be a unicorn, that's a nightmare, isn't it?
That is actually, and that's a fantastic point what you bring here. I've never heard of anybody actively chasing on or trying to ask and wonder what happened with the people that you interviewed and you decided not to continue to pursue ever after, right? I've been lucky to come across with some of those then in the past that, by X or Y reason ended up in another organization, and then we just crossed paths again. And I mean, back then, when I remember, like, these guys they were good, they were great. We just had some other profile that we were confident that was just fantastic. Yeah, and actually, now that I think a little bit more about it, we could have made a better decision back then. And it's great. Like, I mean, we never do think about it, right? And just like we developed this methodology in-house to try to evaluate, our decision making, I don't see how that right now is feeding the HR processes into like realizing where you're screwing it up in your process and you're not making the best decisions.
Yeah, it's completely missed and glossed over entirely. I wonder if in hiring, it's partly because um, a lot of the decisions are human decisions. We're very confident in our abilities in making those kind of intuitive gut feel decisions. Even if someone then goes to another company and does really well, we might still think of ourselves as being right and say, well, that was just their environment, that had a chance. For the role at the time they interviewed, I still backed my decision that I made. And maybe it's not, maybe also the error is not as obvious as with a company where it's like, well, they're now worth $1 billion. Oh my God, what have I done? As opposed to, oh, okay, they're now CEO. Well, they could have had the same career here.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. And as well, there's so many other factors that go into hiring a person, right? And like the context matters, where they went to, the kind of organization, the resources they had. You don't know that, and you don't have any control over that, right? You don't know what would have happened if you had hired that person because of all of these different factors. But you do get to see, and I guess understand, if you hire someone and you were betting onto this person, and very shortly after you hired them, they pretty much flopped and ended up either quitting or going to another organization or just not delivering the value that you were expecting them to deliver, right? And that's, I guess, like the easiest way to see things, and where you could have thought, okay, maybe these other profiles could have been a better solution. And when you see that other person, maybe it came back to your process again, or maybe got engaged with another organization and in a similar role, maybe your competitor, and then they are just killing it, right? So yeah, it's not as easy, I guess. But nevertheless, an interesting thing to do, and definitely some value in evaluating your decisions.
And I think now, again, with AI, it's AI is changing everything so profoundly that it's really good to sit down and think about some of these fundamental issues again that have been glossed over, because it's like measuring the ones that got away for a company are probably hasn't been in the top 20 problems because so many other things about the hiring process have been screwed. But now maybe there's an opportunity that, hang on, we could be, tapping into LinkedIn API or an Apollo API so often, understanding where the candidate is, measuring if they've been successful or not. Like, there could be a lot more that's done that isn't currently being done.
But I do agree. I mean, there are so many bigger pressing issues at the moment with where, the status of the industries and where, the AI tools in place, and how many roles in organizations are changing, and the way we do work, is changing because of these new tools coming into place. And because of the same thing, I don't know if right now the attention or like the capacity for an organization to pay attention to that would be where they would be getting the most value at the moment, right? Like, there's so many other processes that you need to fine tune.
Yeah, speaking of hiring, you have built some very substantial teams across a variety of industries. You've learned a lot, obviously, through trial and error, through success, through probably a little bit of failure along the way. What are your biggest lessons from hiring and team building as well?
One of the biggest things that I focus on when I'm trying to hire someone is, rather than like the technical skills are a kicker, right? Like, you need to have it, at least to be able to deliver whatever is like the immediate requirement for the role. But I focus quite a lot as well on like soft skills, and like the capacity of it, your new hire to deliver, because as you're hiring people, you're now delivering through people rather than being you yourself the one that's delivering through your own individual contribution. And the capacity that this person may have to successfully get involved with the rest of the team, to contribute, to become a good team member. And then in the end, how will his contribution guarantee that your team remains or becomes and remains a high performing team, right? And in my opinion, those soft skills are probably the hardest ones and the most important ones when it comes to like hiring someone, right? Because you can always teach technical skills. There can be a gap between, a specific system, a specific language, a library, you name it. But the one thing that you cannot teach someone is like those soft skills that, are intrinsic to the person. And to me, that is just a fundamental thing to take into consideration whenever you're hiring someone to join your team.
And when you say soft skills, like what do you mean by that? Do you mean like communication? Do you mean more like that personality? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, so there's things that, like I said, you can't teach. Like drive, or embracing teamwork, or the curiosity for me is just fundamental. And learning skills, the capacity to learn new things and unlearn other things, right? The desire to solve problems, that ethics, and just being a truthful, honest, transparent person. These kind of things are they make a big difference, when you have someone already in your team, and when you have someone that's not compatible with the values that the rest of the team has, right? um like I said, especially in data, I mean, the skills, like that hard technical skills, keep evolving, and they're so ephemeral. They're valid for a few months, and then they're not valid anymore. So whatever remains is, whatever you're actually carrying on as a human, and whatever is part of your, fundamental um, values, I guess. um, Another thing that I find very important, and I mentioned briefly, or I said it, but like the drive that you have to, what's moving you as human, what makes you tick, what do you want to achieve. And and in the measure that you have someone that has the right drive, that is compatible with whatever is, the context in your organization, the more you can guarantee that you're going to have a successful team and a successful team member, and someone that will be pushing in the right direction. Because you can, sometimes it's just money, and if it's just money, what's driving them, anyone's going to show up with, $5 more, and then the guy's going to be gone. These kind of things are super important when it comes to like hiring the right people.
I think anyone listening to this would agree with you 100%, and so would I. I guess the challenge is, how do you identify or measure these things in the hiring process, as opposed to maybe in the first few months of them working there and observing how they behave, which is an indicator of their values. How have you approached that in the past?
Yeah, it's not easy, I agree, but at least like every time that I've had like for the most relevant roles that I have within my teams, I typically have a longer process than what is normal when it comes to like, typical process. Because like most people would just have one interview and then that's it, then you're hired, right? Some companies, of course, the more structured ones may have some challenges, or technical evaluations, and like here is this code, go through it and tell me what's the problem with it, solve it, blah blah blah, right? This kind of stuff. I like to spend time with them. Like I like to talk with people. And even actually, as part of my interviews, I actually do spend a good amount of time trying to learn more about who they are, about what they did the weekend, what do they do when they're stressed, what happens, tell me about like the worst situation you've had at, the biggest challenge you've had at work or in personal life. um, in some cases, I've even like had a couple of conversations and then invite them, have some coffee over, maybe go for some lunch, like truly get to know the person, and understand their underlying motivations to, being involved with us. Um, of course, when you talk with like references and so on, I actually do like talking with like previous employers, and just spending a good time just talking about how it was to have the person around, and understanding like his engagement rather than what he was delivering, which is what a lot of people just focus on, like the hard deliverables. I want to know what it was like to have him around. um, and I think like those are some ways to like that you can actually have and understand. um, yes, of course, the more you spend time with the person, the more you will get to know it, and there's a limit to how much time you can actually have someone involved in a process until that person becomes tired, annoyed, or someone else finds him. um, but I figure that, yeah, the more time you dedicate to like developing these skills as a recruiter, and just doing it over and over and over again, you kind of start getting that sense, and like being able to sniff what you're looking for in a person, or in a team members.
And with this approach you've taken, like, can you think back to the people who were either successful or unsuccessful in these kind of in-depth conversations you had? And are there any patterns that have emerged? Like, why would you have said no to, let's say, the 90% versus yes to the 10%? Or was it just vary from candidate to candidate?
Yes. What's driving them? Like, what is actually driving them? And how does that how does that match the current situation where the organization is, right? Like, the people, I don't know. For example, I don't want to be too specific because I don't want to, someone ever hears this. But we had this case of one individual who happened to have the perfect technical skills and at least experience on paper for being in delivering a similar role than the one that we needed. But there was something odd about him, and we just couldn't tell what it was. We were quite pressured in terms of like time. We really needed to hire that person, and something didn't really match with the people that he said that he knew. So we kind of let it go. We hired the person. We, like I said, we were in a bit in a rush. And afterwards, when like this person was actually actively involved in the role, we figured out that there was a bigger story behind how and why he had left where he had left and his drive to be where we were, that we quickly realized that he just was not the right profile to have around. He did not have the right reason and the interest to be with us. He didn't have the same drive. He didn't really have and wanted to be part of the success story that we were trying to write. He was just there in a way just to use us as a stepping stone to a bigger goal that he had. And it was quite evident as soon as we got him on board that he was just not interested in that whatsoever right away.
Yeah, I'm sure those kind of examples must burn in the memory, the ones that didn't work out.
Well, I mean, it does burn in the memory. You learn from them. Like whenever you have this gut feeling and something's telling you, there's something not right. More than often it happens, when you just have to take a decision and you need to move forward because otherwise, things are burning. But more often than not, especially when it's about people, that gut feeling kind of matters. And you end up realizing a little bit later that, you probably had the right hunch.
Yeah, it's interesting with the gut feeling because it's sort of the other end of the spectrum of a data-driven approach. But maybe it's just because we don't know enough about the history of humans to understand what exactly a gut feeling is. And maybe, it's almost like an algorithm built on tens of thousands of years of our experience as a human. Maybe it's a lot more intelligent than we give it credit for.
Which is exactly what it is. I mean, we're essentially a model based, that makes decision based on our experiences and the culture and the context we grew on, and based on that, we're able to make decisions and split decisions, right? And some of those, the system 1 and system 2, some of those are taking the system 1 without us knowing exactly why, but there is a big reason behind these things, behind our experience, and we are not always able to articulate straight away like what is going on there. So I guess gut feeling is more than just gut feeling. I guess it's not that much of I know it is very strange to hear this, especially coming from me, but there is some reason behind why you're feeling what you're feeling. So probably you should pay attention to it as well.
Last time we chatted, you mentioned that there can't really be anything more important in your job as a leader than hiring the right people. And maybe people talk about doing that, or people are our most important asset, blah, 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 but it doesn't really connect to how they treat the hiring process and how much dedication they actually give to it. So it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts around, how do you actually focus on hiring? How do you elevate it to the priority that it actually should be?
If you're hiring someone, it means that you now deliver through these people, right? Like if you're responsible of a team and you're no longer, delivering through your own contributions and your own actual work, you're not, then these are the persons, this is the resources that will be delivering whatever will be used to measure you, right? Therefore, you should absolutely guarantee that whoever is coming into your organization will be able to deliver and exceed the expectations that are, that are bestowed upon you. Now, if this is true, then why on earth would you not pay maximum attention to making sure that you get the absolute best candidate that you could possibly do to guarantee that this is, the true case, moving forward in the future, right? The one that's going to continue enabling your team, the one that's going to continue, creating the right environment, the one that's going to have the same drive, the same focus, the same attention on the same things that, matter for you, and that you will be able to deliver through these people eventually. I'm often surprised by how, and I guess I see it more often in first-time managers and individual contributors that all of a sudden need to hire people. How little do they truly understand how critical it is to hire the right person, or that they want to delegate this responsibility to the HR roles and the HR partner or whoever is kind of helping them getting right talent, or even worse, delegating it to a direct report who then has to hire his own peer, right? So for me, just hiring the right person, building the right team is incredibly relevant, incredibly important, and you need to dedicate as much time as necessary to guarantee that you're getting the right talent on board.
And there's if I think back to my own experience of hiring over the past 10 years or so, I feel like probably in retrospect, my philosophy was a little bit offbeat. What I mean by that is I was of the view for several years that I would hire someone that I didn't have a reason to not hire, if you see what I mean. They went through each stage, they were fine. There wasn't a specific reason that I should not hire them. For me, I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to hire them because they haven't failed any stage. But I now probably realize in retrospect, especially running a startup where each person has a profound impact, positive or negative, on the organization, is no. The bar has to be higher. It should be no. They've excelled at each stage and they are the right person, as opposed to they're not the wrong person. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. I mean, and especially I'm glad you bring up being on a startup situation, right? Because in a way, also the biggest challenge when it comes to hiring someone changes as well, given the context where you are, right? Now you were saying I was hiring for the whoever didn't give me reasons not to hire him, right? Rather than just looking, I guess, for that perfect piece that you absolutely need to make sure that whatever you're trying to achieve is guaranteed, right? And that's in a way part of, I guess, one of the things that you really need to take into consideration when you're hiring people, right? So how do you envision your team in 1 year? How do you see it in 2 and 3 years? What will be the needs? What is the current context of your organization, and how will it be evolving? Where would you like it to evolve to? And then based on that, what will be the pressures and the kind of needs, and how will the roles and the requirements from your team and the people that report to you will be evolving? And in that sense, then are you hiring for that person that will fit into this current situation, but also in the development over the next years, right? And when you look at it from that perspective, then you're going much more deeper when you're evaluating people, right? And then not just hiring someone that just ticks the marks, but actually really does fit that over longer term vision.
Yeah, interesting the way you frame it there, because again, if I reflect on the last 5 years of running a startup, I feel that at times you can get stuck in this almost lean startup obsession where it's just, let's get the next thing out. It's all about you doing the MVPs of whatever it is you're doing, if it's in the product or in marketing or sales. It's almost anti-vision and strategy in a sense, because you're not often thinking about the longer term. But yeah, having a vision over the person and how they will grow in the organization, I guess, must force you to really think about, is this the right person or not for the long run?
Exactly. I mean, and particularly, in startups where, the tech skills, the tech skills are quite important into delivering that immediate need that you have, right? But I mean, things will look very, very different in 2, 3, 6 months, right? So do they have those soft skills to adapt, to evolve, to pivot, to solve the challenges that will come? More often than not in startups, you end up doing things that are outside of what the strict role description goes, right? And that will be true for the next years. So do you have someone that is capable of adapting to that and that will be, evolve and solve and deliver and help contribute to the overall chances of success of your startup.
Thinking now about screening. So there's again an analogy here between hiring and the work you're doing with the AI Scout. So I think this is especially interesting. CV screening is a typical first step in the hiring process. Someone is going to get someone's CV and look at it. Someone in talent acquisition, a recruiter, a hiring manager, what have you. Traditionally, that's just been done manually. Now we're seeing the development of tools, AI, for example, to, stack rank CVs or grade them, compare them to a job description, do some kind of automation. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think this is going to be of benefit? Do you see some issues with this approach, especially given you might have gone through a similar learning process with the AI Scout system?
Similarities that I see between like the process of like how, having an AI Scout for people and having an AI Scout for startups. I guess in a way, no matter how similar the startup is in paper or how adequate this startup is to whatever you're trying to look into or like, what you want, in the end, it's all about the human element. And, in this case, how the founders, because those are the ones that will be driving the company, how will they drive success, right? The same happens with, screening humans. You may, no matter how good this human looks like in paper, it may tick all the boxes. And just as like we were talking before, it ticks all the boxes, but like, does it have, that human side of things? Because you're hiring a human, it's a human resource, right? And that is something that perhaps AI is not ready, or no, I'm completely sure that AI, I guess it's not ready yet to truly tackle. Maybe in the future. But yeah, so in that sense, I guess like there is another challenge when it comes like using these new technologies as well when it comes to like hiring, right? On one end, there is like this overhype of like what AI can truly do at the moment. Those who don't understand yet the technical side, or those who are not that involved with the technical side of AI, especially if you're like an HR partner that all of a sudden they tell you there's this new magical system and this black box that can find whatever exactly you're trying to figure out really quickly or really fast without you even having to pay any attention or putting any effort. I feel like sometimes things are solved beyond what they're are truly capable of, in a way. And like I said, like the users may have greater expectations of what the actual capabilities is. They may relax and then just hope like, then yeah, the system will do everything for me and I don't need to like really pay attention to it and just trust it blindly, and then just not get involved. And then in my opinion, then this is a recipe for disaster, because the human in the loop, in my opinion, it's key in any AI supported process, right? You need to have the human looking at it and paying attention to what's happening, how's it happening, what is it that is rejecting, just like we were talking about. Is it rejecting those false negatives, like why is it making these decisions, which decisions have been made lately, and take just a general look at what it's being recommended to you or whatnot, right? Yeah, it definitely needs still some sort of human in the loop, human involvement into making sure that things go in the right direction. And I guess like these things are in a way inherently human, right? So, but yeah, I guess like that is part of like my concerns or challenges with that I see with like how this technology is being used today, probably.
Yeah, 100%. And we're definitely not there quite yet. I wonder if with hiring, at least this is my view anyway, the way it's been traditionally done is so fundamentally flawed. I feel like there's so much upside, even if the AI is imperfect, even if it's going to have false positives and false negatives, we might overtrust it. The current situation for most companies is they would not have any clue why they rejected 10,000 candidates, because it's just someone in a system, in an ATS, clicking a reject button. There's not really any evidence for that. There's no transparency. There's obviously a lot of bias with the CV, and it's got someone's name, their ethnicity, their gender, their blah, blah, blah. So in theory, an AI system should be able to rank a CV, give it a score out of 100, give it reasons why it was rejected, give it reasons to the candidate why it was rejected. Like that, with the current technology, is possible. Might not be super accurate, but it's possible. And so I hope that that we could be on a step change, but I could certainly see how there's going to be a lot of news stories coming out about so and so tool rejects this kind of person or this type of person, which will probably create a lot of fear in the interim, I suspect.
Yeah, and I've been like I've come across stories here and there in LinkedIn. Like this HR manager was really upset when he figured out that he himself was being screened out of like the role that was exactly for like the description, right? Like, and I guess like that is part of the like a reflection of humans not getting involved and not overseeing what's happening and understanding that this is not a magical thing yet, right? Like it's not you in a computer, it's just a program that's making decisions based on things that can be adjusted and improved. And like so you need to make sure that you are overseeing it and adjusting what could be done to guarantee um, that the system to deliver what you're expecting, right? So not taking a hands-off approach.
And a bit more broadly now about AI in hiring. So we've seen already candidates use AI to optimize their CV to apply en masse to numerous roles. Companies now using it at that CV screening stage. Some AI interviewers as well, so like an AI bot doing an interview, either a video or a chat bot. Any other thoughts about where AI will be in hiring in the next couple of years? Like any bold predictions that you might have?
I mean, there are already some quite clear use cases at the moment uh, when we see it transcribing interviews, summarizing these interviews, and then I don't know to what degree then are they using this learning from like those interviews and transcribing it, like making decision making and like the actual screening and kicking out. Like I said, I'm not very familiar to like the actual extent of where the current situation is. I am definitely, if I had to bet on something, if we're not there yet, it's definitely going in that direction, right? Because like the entire process of hiring someone it's just it's a deal flow, it's a pipeline basically, right? Where you have this funnel and you have a lot and you want to get to one, and that process as you're screening out in the different steps that you set up, um, like the ambition definitely will be there into like having a system that makes complete full decisions by itself until a point where like you should, yeah, I guess like you have the least amount of human intervention as possible. I guess like that will be the aim. Now, is that something that we want? Well, I mean, I don't know. You're hiring humans, and those are the humans that will be involved with you. And like I said, how far will be the technology to actually be able to gauge and measure the things that I was saying, speaking about before, that those soft skills, those drivers, those things that you can see and that you can feel, and like how compatible a human may be with like your current culture. These kind of things you cannot, for you to be able to build something like that, not only you need to be able to analyze a human in a very much deeper way than what we currently are capable of doing, but on top of that you need to also analyze your culture, what drives your culture, your context, your company, your situation. And in my opinion, we're very far from that, one. And two, do we really want it to be like that?
Perhaps it's a little glimpse into an Orwellian future. But that said, I was told about something this week, a really cool use of AI, which was this is going to sound like a bit of a random thing, in tracking animals and cattle. I think like cattle, whales, and what have you. Apparently, the difference among like 100 cows' faces mathematically is vastly more different than among humans' faces. Obviously, for us, human faces are much more different than cows' faces are, but according to actual numbers, cows are more different. I wonder whether then there's differences among humans that we can't spot or see that an AI machine might end up being able to see, and it might almost like a quantification of this gut feel that we have, or maybe something that's off a plane we can't even understand. That would be fascinating, wouldn't it? I wonder if we'll get to that point.
For sure. I mean, in the end, those differences are nothing other than parameters, and what is it that you're feeding the system, and what is it that you're evaluating, right? And in that regard, it can be anything from parameters in your DNA, from like physiological parameters, and all these things that we just don't pay attention to, that a system can actually pay attention to. Um, yeah, but when it comes to how relevant would that be, into a hiring process, I guess. I mean, if it, like I said, if it were able to get into those deeper motivations, those deeper analysis of like who you are, as a human, what drives you, what your values, what are your values, what are you trying to achieve, what, and in that sense, that compatibility with your team. Um, yeah, probably in that direction. Now there are already many models, by the way, and like you have all these models when you feel some information that tells you about your personality and things like that. But I feel like those models, which by the way are already being used in or have always been used in like these hiring and recruitment processes, don't truly surface all the other things that are embedded in your history, embedded in your context, embedded in your ambitions, and all those other things. I mean, the only way to figure them out is by interacting with a human.
Yeah, we figured midway through scaling out our team that the key for us in the hiring process was to try to set it up so that people had an opportunity to demonstrate with their behavior the values we were after, as opposed to just talk about them. So we felt that the interviews that were just like, tell me about the time you did this, tell me about the time you did that, fairly weak, because if someone's a good storyteller, they had good examples already set for demonstrating a certain value, then they would excel. But like talk is cheap. And so we tried to devise a way that within the hiring process, a candidate could demonstrate something. So I'll give you an interesting example. For us, we basically figured out the most important thing for us was, could these people learn new things quickly? Because to your point, things change so quickly that if you don't have someone who's A, willing, and B, able to learn new stuff all the time, then they're not going to do very well in a startup, in a fast-paced environment. So then we came up with something which is kind of cool for our software engineers. We asked them to do a short coding challenge in R, like the statistical language R, which no software engineers know. And so it's a very interesting test to see, like, would they say, I'm not interested in this, I don't care about R, R's a stupid language, or if they just couldn't do it, they couldn't learn it. Like, there would be so many ways that I feel like they could fail that test, which would be a very good indicator for us that they probably weren't going to be a great fit. And so that was a way that we kind of hacked the hiring process to force them to have an opportunity to demonstrate a behavior. Thinking about that now, have you seen anything kind of similar, like any other approaches to hiring that are more based on, like the actions speak louder than words concept, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, I guess, like my latest or most recent recruitments were something in a very similar fashion, actually. We were hiring people who were completely unfamiliar with venture. And then we would have all these discussions about, where do you invest? Why do you invest? And like trying to think how, first of all, trying to evaluate how fast they were able back then to like understand how venture made decisions. And then the type of task that they had at hand, we gave them, a big list of companies, and they had to run models and explain what's going on, um, and think not from a data engineer, but as if you were in the role of an investor, which was not what I'm hiring you to, but I'm trying to figure out if you're able to like understand beyond what you're doing, and if you're able to like learn quickly about what we're having, about the discussion we're having, and so on. Also, another, I guess, like another type of exercise that I was involved to multiple times was in like this an assessment center. So like the problem with assessment centers is that you need to require a lot of time and some senior profiles ideally to be involved into there, and time from the candidates as well. But those are great examples of how you can actually gauge this and measure these other things, right? You put them in a situation, and it doesn't matter what they are trying, like the actual answer they're coming to, but like how they were thinking, how they overcame this challenge. You actively put them under pressure and try to figure out, okay, so like, are they able to handle this? Are they able to, even with like the people that they're competing with for like the role or the position, can they actually work together and overcome the fact that they are technically, adversaries in this situation, but they need to achieve a role, like a goal. So like, can he overcome these kind of things? And this is just an example of like different ways that you can, you can test these soft skills. But what you did, and I figure this is like the most relevant thing, rather than what and how you do it, is like understanding that you need to figure out these specific soft skills that are important for succeeding in the role, right? And you can do it in very complex ways, like, these assessment centers, or you can do it in like more easier ways with like small cases, 1 hour. There goes a couple of questions, trying to think quickly and evaluate the specific targets.
I'm wondering if you had any general advice for, let's say, new leaders who are maybe going to try to build their first team. You've got a lot of experience here. Like, what should they be doing if they're building their kind of team from scratch? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing that you need to understand is that now you're going to be delivering through people. Now you're going to be delivering to someone else. And the process of hiring these people is incredibly important for you to be able to succeed at your new role. The first thing that you need to understand is your new role, or your role, is now different. You no longer will be measured by whatever good things you're able to build yourself, but with how you're able to put a team that gets the right motivation and the right clarity to achieve the new goals. And in that measure, you need to guarantee that whoever joins your team is going to help you, achieve your future goals. Therefore, recruiting becomes absolutely critical. And you need to hire someone that will be able to evolve with, however your role and the requirements of your context evolve over the next years. If I give, I guess, like few pointers, would be then understand your context, right? What will be these challenges in the next 1 to 3 years? I'll draft this plan of what your ideal team should look like. If you want to, and how you like to evolve your team, by the way. But if you like to guarantee that you're achieve this plan for the next 1 to 3 years, understand as well that your level of involvement with your team members will change, right? A lot of the times, and like, new leaders struggle with understanding how to be a leader and understand, I guess, like, the initial approach is just to delegate something without realizing that, the human on the other side will have different levels of needs, and the situation will have a different need, and the way that you engage with your team needs to vary as well, depending on the context and the situation you're in every moment. And by the way, hint, if you're trying to figure out or I guess, like, an easy model to start learning how to be a good, effective leader, there's like this it's quite old, but it's very good for like new or first time leaders, like this idea, or like the situational leadership theory, which in my opinion is a great first step to becoming an effective leader and understanding how to engage with your team. And then I would say put as much care into tech savviness for like delivering the short-term requirements as you will in soft skills. And then, yes, finally remember that tech gaps can always be bridged, but drive and intrinsic values from humans, those things stay with humans.
Awesome. Great advice from a lot of experience, I'm sure.
Well, hopefully, let's see if someone finds it useful. And yeah, I guess, like, those are the things that I learned from messing it up multiple times and getting it right many other times as well. Few things are as great teachers as the experience, and very few people actually learning the heads from others. But if anyone listens to at least one of these points, I think they will be better off.
Awesome.